powerful poem, which is kind of unknown.
Benny, did you guys go to Rabbi Shepherd's this morning?
Yes.
Jumping on the way here, or?
Yeah. They probably had too much of the biscuits. I can't leave right away because I have.
All right, good morning, everybody. Can you hear me through the microphone? A little bit. Okay. Good morning. All right. Good morning to those online. Nice to see you this morning. After the excitement of the last few days, the last few weeks, how nice to have a Shabbat. That's just Shabbat.
Yeah.
Because in a couple of days, say Saturday, Sunday, Monday night begins Sukkot. We've got a full week and a piece of celebrations and dinners and learning and Star Trek and all the things in the sukkah, sushi in the sukkah and scotch in the sukkah and something else in the sukkah. This morning we are in our blue Siddur on page 140. If you're joining us online using the PDF, we're on page 101 as Benny leads us off with Matov.
Matovu Alecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael, V'ani ro'eh hazecha, ahoveitecha, Eshachave Elecha Kodsecha, Be'iratecha, Adonai Hashmi Beitecha, ומקום משכן כבודך, ואני אשכב ואפרח, אברך לפני אדוני עושי, ואני תפילתי, לך אדוני אפרצון, אלוהים ברוב חסדך, עליני באמת ישר.
A little intention before we get too far into our davening. It's in our red Siddur online on page 102, not in our blue Siddur here. But it's a little intention for prayer. Hareini mekabel alai mitzvat haboreh ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. I hereby accept the obligation we read on Yom Kippur of fulfilling the Creator's mitzvah as written in the Torah. Love your neighbor as yourself. If you are able, please rise. We're on page 146 or online page 103 from your Birkat HaShachar.
Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan losech bibina lehavdil ben yom uben layla.
Amen.
Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, she'atzani b'tzalmo.
Amen.
Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, she'atzani ben churim.
Amen.
Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, she'atzani Yisrael.
Amen.
Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, pokeach ivrim.
Amen.
Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, malbish arumim.
Amen.
Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, matir asurim.
Amen.
Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, zokech kefufim.
Amen.
Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, ruka haaretz al hamayim.
Amen.
Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asa li kol tzorki.
Amen.
Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, asher eichim mitzadei gaber.
Amen.
Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, uzer Yisrael b'gvura.
Amen.
Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, uzer Yisrael b'sifara.
Amen.
Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, anoten layach koach.
Amen. You may be seated. We say the brachot for learning Torah. Then we'll invite somebody, Benny, Buzz, John, somebody to teach us a little bit of Torah this morning. We're on page 152 or online page 107. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, la'asok b'divrei Torah, v'ha'arev na Adonai Eloheinu et divrei Toratcha, v'finu u'v'fi amcha beit Yisrael, v'nihyeh anachnu v'tze'etzayenu, v'tze'etzayei amcha beit Yisrael, kulanu yodei shemecha, v'lomdei toratecha v'ishma, Baruch atah Adonai, Amen Torah le'amo Yisrael, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher b'charbanu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et torato, Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah. Amen, amen. We invite Buzz to come up here and share some words from Brachot, from the first tractate of Talmud.
Good morning, good Shabbat all. This morning, we're in Brachot in a few different areas, but initially in discussion of the prayer which is said introductory to the new moon. When the new month is coming, the Shabbat before, there's a special prayer that announces the new month coming. And we discussed not only the individual who wrote it, Talmudist known as Rav, but the fact that this particular blessing prayer does not mention the moon, new or otherwise, but it is a prayer for us. It is a prayer written in the plural. It is, may it be your will, O Lord our God, that you grant us a long life, life of peace, goodness, blessing, sustenance, life of freedom, meaning freedom of movement, which has to do with physical health. Dread of sin, no shame or disgrace, wealth and honor, reverence for heaven, and fulfilling the desires of our heart for good. And it's plural, as the Achates are plural, as the Ashamdu is plural, as so many of the things that we do is prayer for the entire community. Included in this, something dear to my heart and the rest of my organs, is the prayer for actual physical health. And the discussion that led from that is how important it is for all of us to take care of the world and to take care of each other, but significantly to take care of one's self. That the self, that your life, is a gift from God, and you take care of it like any other gift. Something I spent a lifetime preaching about, lowercase t. Don't want to get anybody's in anybody's face here, but preaching about be interested, be engaged in your own physical well-being, because that is the only way that you will be able to do the good things that you need to do, want to do, and frankly have been told to do. Good morning and good Shabbos.
Thank you very much for it, Buzz. Much appreciated. We say thank you to our wonderful teaching, and thank you to the group who goes to learn. Thank you to Rabbi Schechter for guiding them. Thank you to God for giving us these words. Thank you to Rob for giving us these words. We're on page 100, if you're online, 111, if you're here in this room, page 154 for Kaddish to Rabban. Yitgadal v'yitgadash Shemei Rabbah, Te'alma Divra Kirutei V'yamlit Malchutei, V'chayetom V'yometom V'chaye V'kol Beit Yisrael, V'hagala U'bizman Kariv V'imru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevorach Leolam Lame Omaya. Yitbarak V'Yishtabach V'Yitpa'ar V'Yitramam V'Yitnaseh. V'Yitadar V'Yitaleh V'Yitalam Shemei Yitzursa B'Riku. Le'ela Mikol Birchata V'Shirata. Tushbechata V'Nechamata. Ta'amiran Ve'alma Ve'imru Amen. Al Yisrael Ve'al Rabbanan Ve'al Talmidehom. Ve'al Kol Talmidei Talmidehom. Ve'al Kol Man De'astim Ve'oraita. Di Ve'atra Hadein Ve'di V'Kol Atar V'Atar. Yehi V'Hom L'Chom Shlama Rabbah. Pina Ve'Chista Ve'Rachamin. Ve'Chain Arifin Zoner V'Ikei. Uforkana Mikkodam Avuhom V'Yishmaya V'Ara V'Imru Amen. Yehi V'Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya. Ve'Chaim Tovim Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'Imru Amen. Osei Shalom Shalom. Tu Merachamav Ya'asei Shalom. Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'Imru Amen. We turn now to page 180. Once again, if you're able, please rise. For online, you can add 0 on page 122 as we sing Baruch She'amar.
And Baruch She'amar Hayallah Baruch Baruch Oseh Bereshit Baruch Omer Ve'oseh Baruch Oseh Mekayim Baruch Merachem Ha'aretz Baruch Merachem Al Habriyot Baruch Meshalem Zachato L'Reah Baruch Chai L'Nekayah L'Netzach Baruch Vodeh U'Matzil Baruch Sheno. Yakitei Olamim Melech Meshubach Umfara De'atzemo Agadol Baruch Atah Adonai Melech Mehulal Batishbachot.
Amen. We're on page 194. Join us online, page 141 for the final psalm. Maybe seated. Sorry, maybe seated. Yeah.
Hallelujah, 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 ever control, hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
12, towards the middle of the page, or if you're online, page 143. As we're crossing the sea, we chant Ozi, the Zimra.
Uzi ve'zivraya va'yehi Yeshua. Ozi ve'zivraya va'yehi Yeshua.
You continue page 218, or online, page 147, towards the middle. It's Shofar 9.
Lefi Yesharim Titala Titala Uvivrei Tzadikim Titbarak Titbarak Shofena David ben Ishai, Abdecha Meshichecha, Yishtabach Veshimecha, La'ad Malkeinu, Ay, Melech HaGadol VeHaKadosh V'Shamayim U'Va'aretz, Ki Lefanai Adonai Eloheinu V'Elohei Avoteinu, Shiru Shvachal Zimra, Ozo Memshala Nehitzah, Gedula Ugvura, Tehila V'Tiferet, Kedusha U'Malchut, Berakot V'Hudachot, מעתה ועד עולם. ברוך אתה אדוני, אל מלך גדול בתשבחות, אל ההודעות אדון הנפלאות, הבוחר בשירי זמרה, מלך אלוקי העולמים.
Scottish stage 220.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמך הבא,
Amen.
ועלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, וחיי כל יום וחיי בכל בית ישראל, בגלה ובזמן קריב, וברוך אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם עולם לעלמיה, יתברך. יתברך, וישתבח מפה ויתמה ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמי דקודשא בריחו. ואלה מכל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירה בעלמא ואמרו אמן.
If you're able, please rise. We're on page 224, or online page 149, for Baruch Hu, the beginning of the Shabbat service.
Baruch et Adonai HaMevorach, Baruch HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, yotzer or uboreh choshen, oseh shalom, uboreh takol.
Okay, be seated.
Michael, you're the אין כרכך אדוני אלוהינו בעולם הזה, ואין זולתך מלכנו לחיי העולם הבא. אבן בלתך גואלנו לימות המשיח, ואין דומה לך מושיענו לתחיית המתים.
We turn with this theme of high holidays, we turn to page 228, or online, page 151, to plead with God and to find God's mercies in this world every morning. El Adon.
אל אדון על כל המעשים, ברוך ומבורך לפי כל נשמה, גודלו וטוב ומלא עולם, אחד ותבונה צורבים אותו, המתקהל על חיות הקודש ונדע וכבוד על המרכבה, זכות ומישור לפני כיסו, חסד ורחמים לפני כבודו, טובים מאורות שברא אלוהינו, יצר ודעת בינה ובשכל, כוח וגבורה נתן מעלה, להיות מורשים בקרב תבל, לב מזיו ומפיקים נוגה, נאה זיוון בכל העולם, שמחים בצאתם וששים בבואם, עושים באימה רצון גאונם. ערב כבוד נותנים לשמוע, כל עברינה לזכר מלכותו. קרא לשמש היפרח אורה, והתקין זורח הלבנה. שבח נותנים לו כל צבא מרום, תפארת וגדולה, שרפים ואופנים וחיות הקודש. זה לא שאתה בזה כל המעשים ביום השביעי, אתה לא אומר שאתה תתברך מושינו על שבח מעשה ידיך ועל מורה אור שעשית יחרות הסלע.
יתברך צורנו
מגן וגואלנו בורא. כולם אהובים, כולם ברורים, כולם גיבורים, וכולם עושים באימה ויראה רצון קונם, וכולם פותחים את פיהם בקדושה, ובטהורה, בשירה, ובזמרה, ומברכים ומשבחים ומפארים ומריצים, ומקדישים וממליכים. את שם האל המלך, הגדול הגיבור, והנורא הקדוש הוא. וכולם מקבלים עליהם ומחות שמיים זה מזה, ונותנים רישות זה לזה, להקדיש ליוצר בנחת רוח. בשפה ברורה ונימה קדושה, כולם כחלונים ואומרים ביראה. קדוש, קדוש, קדוש אדוני צבאות, מלוך כל הארץ כבודו. ואופנים לחיות הקודש ברש גדול מתעשים ומצורפים, לעומתם משבחים ואומרים, ברוך כבוד אדוני במקומו. ברוך מותנו למלך אל חי וקיים. אור חדש על ציון תאיר ונזכה כולנו מהירה לאורו. ברוך אתה אדוני יוצר המאורות. Turn to page 238. Ahava Rava together. Ahava Rava Avdanu Adonai Eloheinu Remelach Gedolah V'Teha Amavta Aleinu Avinu Malkeinu Ba'avur Avoteinu Shabbatnu Lecha Shabbatnu Lecha Avinu Malkeinu V'Lamdehem Kokecha V'tamdeinu Avinu Av Harachaman Hamrachem Rachem Aleinu V'tein b'libeinu lehavi ולהשכיל לשמוע, ללמוד וללמד, לשמור ולעשות, ולקיים את כל דברי תלמוד תורתך באהבה. והאר עינינו בתורתך, ודבק ליבנו במצוותיך, ויחל לבבינו לאהבה וליראה את שמך, ולא למות לעולם ועד, ולא למות לעולם ועד, כי בשם קודשך הגדול והנורא נגילה ונשמחה ותשועתך. יביאנו מארבעתיו.
The Talmud together the four corners, seats the others. Preparation for Shema, and we're giving a kiss every time you say the word seats. Shabbat starts in a moment on page 242. If you're joining us online, page 155.
וקראתנו לשמך הגדול, סלע באמת, להודות לך ולאחריך באהבה, ברוך אתה אדוני, הבוחר בעמו ישראל, באהבה. שמע ישראל, אדוני, אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך, ושיננתם בבניך ודיברת בם, ושבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובתחומך, וקשרתם להיות על ידיך, והיו לתותחות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. ויאמר אדוני אל משה לאמור, דבר אל בני ישראל ואמרת עליהם, ועשו להם ציצית על כתפי בגדיהם לדורתם, ונתנו על ציצית הכנף תלתכם, והיה לכם לציצית, הוריתם אותו, וזכרתם את כל מצוות אדוני, ועשיתם אותם, ולא תטורו אחרי מדבריכם ואחרי עיניכם, אשר אתם זונים אחריהם, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, הייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם אלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
On page 248.
לדור ודור קיים ושמו קיים, וחסו נכון מלכותו ואמונת עולם קיימת, וכל ברא וחיים וקיימים. אמת שאתה וראי עלינו ולאי אבותינו, מלכנו מלך אבותינו, גואלנו, גואל אבותינו, יוצרנו, צור ישועתנו, והודינו מצילנו, מעולם שמך, אין אלוהים זולתך. עזרת אבותינו, אתה ומעולם.
We'll continue in just a moment with the words of Michamocha on page 252, or if you're joining us in the Red Book, page 158.
תהילות ליל עליון, ברוך הוא מבורך, משה בני ישראל, וחנו שירה בשמחה רבה, ויאמרו כולם, מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורא תהילות עושה פלא, נורא תהילות עושה פלא, שירה חדשה שיפקו גאולי, לשמך על שפת הים, יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ויאמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. יאללה 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 יאללה
If you're able, please rise. We're on page 252 or online, page 158. We begin the Amidah on page 255 in just a moment.
Israel, kuma be'ezrat Israel, U'pteinu becha Yehuda ve'Yisrael, Go'aleinu Adonai tzvaot shemo, Kedosh Yisrael, Baruch atah Adonai, Ya Yisrael. Ya la 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 ya la 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 satai dikta ya la 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 yofi agi tehila teba ya la la ya Adonai ya la sabatai dikta ya la yofi agi tehila teba Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Eloheinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor VeHaNorah El Elyon Gomel Chasadim V'Tovim V'Konei HaKol V'Zocher B'Azei Havot ומבין אוהב בני בניהם למען שמו יחדיו מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה אתה גיבור למעני מחיי לעתים אתה רב והושיע מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומחזיר עצורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בגבורות, ומדומם לך. מלך מביט ומחייך ומצמיח ישועה ושמח על החיות מתים וברוך אתה אדוני וחיי המתים. נקדש את שמך בעולם כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי ברוך וכתוב על נביאך וכרזה אל זה ואף
Shabbat. you're still davening, please take your time. Page 268 is Kaddish Shalem online, page 167.
יתקרב יתקרב מרבה, ועלמה דברה פירותי ימלך מלכותי בחיי חום וביום יפון וחיי בכל בית ישראל, ועגלה בזמן קריב אמרו אמן. יהי שמרה ונגורה, לעולם מאוד מהיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרבה ויתעשה ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמלכו לשרינו. לילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה וצדקתה ונחמתה דמירם בעלמא אמרו אמן. תתקבל צלותיון ובדון כל ישראל ודמון וישמעיה אמרו אמן. יהי שלום רב מן שמעיה וחיים עלינו על כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
Our Torah service begins on page 312, page 312, or in the online Siddur, page 168.
אין כמוך אלוהים אדוני ואין כמעשיך מלכותך מלכות לכל עולמים וממשלתך בכל דור ודור. אדוני מלך אדוני מלך אדוני אלוהים לעולם אדוני עוז לעמודי אדוני יברך את עמו השלום. הרחמים היטיב ברצונך את ציון. תבנה חומות ירושלים, תבנה חומות ירושלים. כי לך לבד כתבנו, מלך רם וניצח, אדון עולמי.
Invite Michael and Morgan and Bree to come up here and open up the ark for us. Those who are able, please rise.
ויהי בנשוא אהרון ויאמר משה קומה עיני ויחוסו אויביך וינוסו משנאיך מפניך כי מציון תצא תורה כי מציון תצא תורה ולדבר אדוני מירושלים ברוך שנתן תורה תורה ברוך שנתן תורה תורה לעמו ישראל בקדושתו. והנרחם ולשמך קדישה קדישה יקים
Together we're gonna say Shabbat. 1, 2, 3. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Vekadosh Shemo.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo. Gadol Adonai, Oner Omer Shemo, Yachedah. Lecha Adonai Agedula, V'Yagevura, V'Yatiferet, V'Yanetzach, V'Yahod. Ki po b'shamayim u'haaretz, ki po b'shamayim u'haaretz. Lecha Adonai hamamlaka, V'yamid na'aseh lechol lerosh. Romemo, Romemo, Adonai Eloheinu, V'hishachavo, V'hishachavo, Le'adom raglav kadosh hu. Romemo,
Romemu,
Romemo,
Romemu,
Adonai Eloheinu, V'hishachavo, V'hishachavo, Lehar kodsu, lehar kodsu, Ikadosh Adonai Eloheinu.
Maybe seated. The Torah reading for this morning on page 1185. So you can close your blue siddur and go to our Etz Chaim Chumash, page 1185. Or if you're joining us in some other Bible somewhere, we're in Deuteronomy chapter 32. Deuteronomy 32. Devarim Amidbeh. It's a big poem. It's Moses' swan song. Like the first question for our conversation. I have to remember that there are people online, so both I have to like to include them if they raise their hand or anything else. It's a meet and shout, but also to repeat what you say if I understand it, so that they can hear it online as well. So what's for here or for anywhere? What's the purpose of poetry? I guess we'll take a step back. Was there a poem you memorized as a kid that you remember still? Robert Frost on a Snowy Evening. That's the one. Miles to Go Before I Sleep.
Whose woods are these, I think I know.
Whose woods are these? I think I know. So you still remember that one? Most of it.
Only 50 years ago.
50 years ago, you remember. 60 years ago, you memorized it. And still, I still use that line, Miles to Go Before I Sleep. Any other poems you've memorized? Miles. Charge the Light Brigade. I had to memorize that one in, I think, 7th grade. I only learned much later what it was about, which I've since forgotten. But I had to memorize that. You remember it still? No. It's long. A few lines of it. Any of them you want to recite? No, okay, no. All right. I don't need to do that to you.
I'm trying to shout, I hope you guys can hear me. Two roads diverged to Yellowwood, and I took the one that was less traveled, and that made all the difference.
Yes.
That's as far as I know.
Right. Judy, another Robert Frost poem has what's the title? Two roads diverging Yellowwood. Right, we memorized that one at some point in school as well. It's somewhere in here, and I hear it every once in a while, and I forget, oh, that one isn't it, I forgot about that one. Look at the poems you memorize. Flanders Fields. You were. All right. For whom the bell tolls. I pledge allegiance to the flag. That's a poem as well. And Miles? The tree? Yes, a poem as lovely as a tree. I didn't know this called the tree. That works. I think I told the story before that my dad offered me $100 when I was in 5th grade to memorize the poem If by Rudyard Kipling. I did not do it. My cousin did it. My dad was like, Dr. King, my niece, I didn't make the deal with her. But I think he did just to like show me that like I should be doing it. I ended up memorizing the poem anyway. You can keep your head in all of that, you're losing it and blame it on you, press yourself on that, you make allowance on the dad too. The Star Spangled Banner, at least the parts by Francis Scott Key that have made it into our national lexicon. There are, you know, a dozen other stanzas that we have not gone to learn. So what's it? So with all of these, or with any of these, why is it a poem? Why not write this as a story? It's easier to memorize if it's a poem. If it rhymes, you kind of remember one of the rhymes, you'll kind of remember the other rhyme. If it's an acrostic poem, you're more likely to remember it. You remember Ashrei. If you said recite Psalm 148, I've recited Psalm 148 a lot of times. It's just harder to remember for me than Ashrei. Ashrei is written acrostic. So if I get stuck on a line, I go, okay, that's the line. Or Tov, or whatever, I can remember which word starts, and that'll kick me off on the rest of the line. And then why, I guess, any English speakers present? That's my wife. Why poetry? What does it do to us?
I think that's exactly what you said. You want to impart something that people is going to remember and carry with it.
Oh, we got some online. People carry it with them. They're able to remember it and carry it with them.
Yeah, and
Maybe
the beauty with the poem is it leaves some room for your own interpretation when you read it. You can read it, and then you can it kind of ignites your own imagination a little bit while reading it, while memorizing it.
It ignites imagination somehow.
Yeah.
While reciting it. Some of them online are Boa Constrictor by Shel Silverstein. I've read it to my kids recently. You can maybe see it better than I can. Okay. A limerick, haiku for Jews. No fins. I don't know if you can hear me online. No fins, no flippers. The gefilte fish swims with some difficulty. That is a haiku for Jews.
So, Rabbi?
Yes, John.
You know, so I remember, you know, although I don't have a great memory for poems necessarily, I have read a bunch in college and etc. And I remember being like, you know, just thoroughly touched by some of them. And there's something about the way the words flow together, the images that come up that touch you in a different way than just a plain story does. And in reading the, and looking at the Hebrew for this particular parsha, you know, the Hebrew is not easy. It's so much easier when it gets into like a narrative, but the Hebrew here is sort of strange conjugations and connections, and it's not conversational for sure.
Right. So if you know Hebrew and you're reading through this text, you know a little bit of Hebrew. It's you could have chosen easier words. The parsha is called Ha'azinu, which comes from the word ozen, which means ear, which is very different than Shema. Shema would have been a much easier way to say, listen. But instead it's ha'azinu, which is cause your ears to perk up, perhaps. And so, right, we're using slightly different words, slightly fancier words. There's a belief that a lot of the poetry in the Bible is actually older than other parts of the Bible. So the song of Moses or Miriam as they cross the sea, the song of Deborah as she sings her victory, the song here of Moshe are perhaps dated, if you ascribe to this, date older than the rest of the Torah. So here we have, I'm starting on 1185, we have Moses' swan song, his final poem to the people. In fact, the last Torah portion ends with this cliffhanger. The last Torah portion ends with, then Moses recited the words of this poem to the very end in the hearing of the whole congregation of Israel. Colon. Right, this following poem. And so we start this, it was last week, we start this week with, here's the poem. Give ear, O heavens, let me speak. Let the earth hear the words I utter. Who's Moses speaking to? The peoples. The assembled multitudes. But also everybody.
That's earth.
The whole earth, maybe.
Yeah.
Give ear, O heavens, let me speak. Let the earth hear the words I utter. Heaven has to be quiet right now because Moses has something to say. And then the words that all right, so we'll read a little bit more in English. May my discourse come down as the rain, my speech distill as the dew, like showers on young growth, like droplets on the grass. For the name of the Lord I proclaim, give glory to our God. And then who's the name of God here? We talked about this one of the days of the holidays. Hatzur, the rock, which nowadays the rock means something different, but the rock. What are other times we call God rock? Sur. Sur Yisrael, Kuvared, rock of Israel. What's another one?
The poem, one of the songs for Shabbat.
One of the songs for Shabbat.
Yeah.
Sur Mishalava Kalu.
And then for Tzadik HaTamar, Tzuri V'lo blah blah blah.
Oh, Tzadik HaTamar has Sur.
Yeah.
Miles. Chanukah, Mahoz, Sur, Yeshuati, rock of ages. Why is God Sur? Suri, Suri V'goali. Adonai Suri V'goali. The Lord is my rock and my redeemer.
Because it's solid, it doesn't wither.
It's solid, it doesn't wither. It represents stability. What's another idea of God that's the opposite of this? Hamakom. Sur is something specific. It's a rock, it's a stone, it's a boulder, it's a flint of some sort. Otherwise, Hamakom, the place. There's solid and there's ethereal. There's different ideas for God and different names for God. Sometimes God is Avinu Malkeinu, or Adon Olam, or Ribono Shel Olam. We have different ideas for God. And so when we're standing up to face God, when we're in a moment of prayer to talk to God, how do we address God? What's that God that we need there? Speak.
Interestingly enough, Rabbi, this opening line is flipped over by Isaiah in the opening in second sentence. Shimu Shamayim Vazini Eretz.
Shimu Shamayim. But so
Vazini Eretz.
right. So now listen, Hashemayim, heavens, and
listen.
And Hazini Eretz, and give ear, O land. He turns it upside down. He switches it.
Exactly.
Right. So was this a common thing to say? Was it something that was known of at some point? Moses goes on to say that the people are unruly. The people haven't been good. This is Moses' last words, pretty much, what he says before he dies. And he chastises the people. And I wonder, is he bitter? Is he angry? Is he trying to make them better? Is he working his best to say, you still have time to change? I don't, but you do. God is good. God is merciful. God is kind and forgiving and vulnerable. You have time to change. You have fought against God. Be better. It's too late for me, but you have a chance to do better in this world. Maybe I'll point out more things as we go on. Just verse 7 on page 1186. L'chor yimot olam binu shnot dor vador sha'al avicha v'yad edcha. Remember the days of old. Consider the years of ages past. Ask your father, he will inform you. This is Lador Bador Nagid Godlecha. And also it's this idea of the 4 questions. Don't be afraid to ask good questions, even silly questions. You sit there at Pesach. The youngest is supposed to ask questions, as if to say anybody should feel free to ask questions. If you're not sure of why something is, turn to people around you and say, why do you do it this way? And people have asked me that. There's one of our congregants always asks why we cover our eyes for Shema. Shouldn't we be specifically looking at the text? The text looks weird in Shema. The ayin is large and the dalet is large. Shouldn't we be looking at it as we say it? It's a good question. So to discuss what it means and why we cover our eyes, where that tradition comes from. We'll read some Torah now. I'll invite Svi up here to read the first 4 aliyot, and John hops online to read the next 3 or 4 aliyot. Art, can you come up for our first aliyah? Is there a Kohen present? Okay. Art is our Levi.
Actually, Rabbi, it's Svi for the first 4.
Right, Svi for the first 4.
Right.
And John for the next 4.
Yep.
3 off here. V'ya'azor v'yagen v'yoshel kol hakosim bo v'namar amen hakol hazugo delavim kol haTorah Kimkom kohen ya'amod hanyahu Shabti ben Tevya Levi v'tzoto Rishon Baruch Santan Torah Lemoy Shobi Kushato V'atama v'kman lahechem Chaim kolchem hayom.
Baruch Adonai Barak, Baruch Adonai Barak Le'olam Va'ed, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Olam, Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Amim V'natan Lanu Et Torato, Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Hazinu hashamayim badabe ravatishma haaretzim refihi yarov kamatar lihi tizal katal imrati kisiri male deshev v'kirvivi male esev ki shem Adonai ekra havu godel Eloheinu Hatzur tamim palo ki chol drachav nishpat el emunah ve'ein avel tzadik v'yashar hu shichei lo banav mumam dorikei shuftalto al Adonai tigmu zod Am naval v'lo chacham, halahu avicha kanecha, hu ascha v'aycha honenecha.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Olam, Asher Natan Lanu Torah Emet, V'chayei Olam Natav B'tochenu. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. The second aliyah, we've had Judy and Larry Mayer. We thank them for sponsoring the Kiddush today in honor of remembering Judy's mother. Ya'amdu, Laviaria ben Moshe Zakana, Yibnu like Yitzchak, Yehuda, the Sarah, Jamie.
Oh, weird.
Baruch Adonai Habarach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Habarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher b'charbanu mikol ha'amim. V'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Zechor Yemot Olam Binu Shno Dor Vador Shal Avicha V'Yagecha Zikenecha V'Yomru La V'Anchel Elyon Goyim B'Afrido V'nei Edom Yetzev Gvulot Amim L'Mispar B'nei Yisrael Ki Chelek Adonai Mo Yaakov Hevel Nachlato Yimtzaehu B'Eretz Midbar Uvtohu Yilel Yeshimon Yisovavenchu Yivon Enechu Yitzrenchu Kishon Eno Kanesher Yair Kino Al Gozalav Yirachev Yifros Kenafa Vikachechu Yisaechu Al Evrato Adonai Badad Yanchenu Ve'nimo El Nechar.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher natan lanu Torah nevet. V'chayei olam natan v'telpenu. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Okay. Now we kind of invite you up for the third Aliyah. Ta'amod, Nomi,
Herschel Tova.
Ershel Tova, She. We're at verse 13 on page 1187.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher b'charbanu mikol ha'amim. V'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Yarkivehu Abama Tearetz V'Yochal Tnuvot Sadai Vainikehu Devash Misela V'Shemen Mechal Mistur Chemat Bakar V'Chalef Tzon Im Chelef Karim Ve'lim B'nei Bashan V'Atudim Im Chelef Koayochi Tav Adam Einav Tishtech Omer Vayishma Yishtirun Vayivad Shamanta Avita Kasita Vayitash Elo Hayasahu Vaynabel Tor Yeshuato Yakniuhu Bizarim B'Toivod Yakisuhu Yizbechu Lashedim Lo Elohai Elohim Lo Yida'um Chadashim Mikarov Ba'u Lo Sharu Mavotechem Tzur Yiladcha Teshi Vatishkach El Mecholelecha.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher natan lanu Torah emet. V'chayei olam natan v'totenu. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Captains, are you okay to come up for the fourth Aliyah? As you're making your way up. Just to note here, that the third Aliyah starts with this idea of, it says that God nursed us, is the Hebrew. The translation here is God fed us. But it's not quite right. The Hebrew says nursed, as in really took care of us. There was no effort on our part to partake in this relationship with God. God did everything in this relationship, and still we spurned God. At the end of that aliyah, it says that we worshipped after Shadim or Shadayim, which translates here as demons, but also could be we lusted after other human beings. We were more interested in human bodies than we were in taking care of this relationship with God. God did everything God could to make us feel loved and wanted and welcome, and we responded by kind of ignoring God. I think it's for today. We're given so much so easily, and we find easy ways to ignore that, to not offer gratitude. We're on so Yamdu, evening.
Sa'ada Amuna.
Sa'ada Amuna, Bat Abraham, Israel,
And Raphael the Hoot.
Ben Raphael the Root, Rabbi E.
Baruch Adonai Habarach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Habarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim. V'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Vayar Adonai vayi'at mikas banav uvnotav. Vayomer astira panai mehem acharitam. Kidor tapuchot hema banihim loimun bam. Hein kinuni v'loel chiasuni behavlehem. Vani akniim bloam begoin ava achaisei. Ki esh kodcha be'api vatikod atyo tachtit. Vatochal eretz vivula vatlahet mostei harim. Aspel lemo ra'od chitzai achalebam. Mizei rav. Uchume reshef v'ketev merari v'shen behemot ashalach bam im chamad zolei afar michutz tishakel cherev u'mechadarim ema gam bachor gam betula yonik im ish seva amarti afehem ashbita me'anos zichram Lule kaso ye vagur peninachru tzaremo penyomru yadeinu rama v'lo Adonai pal kol zod ki goy vad atzot hema v'ein bahem tevuna.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher natan lanu Torah emet. V'hayei olam nata b'tokenu. Baruch atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. That was the fourth aliyah. Alan, are you able to come up? Who are you able to come up? And is it Laura? For the fifth aliyah? I want to thank Svi again for reading the first four aliyot. We now turn online to John to read the next few aliyot. I got one letter. Do Abraham Yisrael, Ben Simanuel, from Bela, Dana, Shimon Kava, Kamishi.
Baruch et Adonai HaTorah.
Baruch Adonai Borach Leolam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai Borach Leolam Vaed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher b'karvanu mikol ha'amim v'nasamanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Torah.
Amen.
Amen. Lo chachmu yashkilu zot yavinu la'acharitam echad yirdof echad elef ushnaim yanisu rebava im lo kitzuram acharam va'adonai hiskiram ki lo kitsurenu turam Oivenu plilim, kimi gefen Sodom gafnam, umishadmot amora, anavemo inve rosh, ashkilot merorot lamo, hamatininim inam, verosh petanim, Achsar, Alohu Kamus Imadi, Hatumba Otorotai, Li Nakam Vashilaem, Le'et Tamud Raglam, Ki Karov Yom Edam, Vachash Atidot Lamu. Ki Adin Adonai Amo, all Avadav Itnecham, Ki Yireh Ki Azlat Yad, Ve'efes Atzur Azuv, V'yamar Elohemo, Tzur Chasio Bo, Asher Cheleb Zavachemo Yochelu, Ishtu Yain Nisicham Yakumu Vayazruchem Yehi Alechem Sitra Ru Ata Ki Ani Hu Vain Elohim Imadi Ani Amit va'achayeh, machatzti va'ani erfa, va'en miyadi matzil.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah temet v'chayei olam natan b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. For the sixth Aliyah, we'll say a Misha Berach for those in our community we're thinking of today. A few of the names to add, and go around the room here and around online. This, I should note, this Torah is a beautiful Torah. It is one of our heavier Torahs. We are all the way rolled to the right side. So if somebody is very strong and right-handed and is able to lift that, I don't know, Jeff, are you? Okay, all right, so we're not there yet, but I just wanted to make sure before I kind of all the aliyot, we've got somebody who's able to lift it. Thank you very much. We'll say a Misha Berach now, and I'll start with my list of names. Misha Berach, Avotenu Avraham Yitzchak Yaakov, Imotenu Sarah Rivka Rachel Valeah, Vivarech Virpei Et HaCholim, Menucha Bat Necha Shol Ben Rivka Bat Sarah Adam Ben Chava Chana Bat Chava, Yosef Ben Rachel Moshe Ben Vega Lezer Ben Chava, Moshe Ben Yehudit Shimon Ben Mazal Yaakov Ben Moshe Yehudit Bat Sarah Imenu, Reuven Michael Ben Shirley Kali Bat Sarah Tzipora Bat Leah, Sarah Fega Bat Esther Gusha Yehudit Gum Bat Sarah, Lavi Aryeh Ben Chana, Sarah Bat Esther, Rivka Bat Sarah, Miriam Bat Dorit, Baruch Ben David, Harav Chaim Yaakov Ben Pesha, Dora bat Goldi, Edith bat Saria, Kevin Miriam bat Esther, Pinchas ben Svia, Hayamata bat Rocco, Skip Kessler, Sarit Turgaman, John Ogle, Jessica Jacoby, Bobby Sachs, Cassandra Hosher, Shirley Rekovich, Jeff Blakely, Al Sanderson, Vivian Sterling, Aharon ben David, Basil bat Ruth, Reuven ben Brana, Arab Sivia, Tana bat Sarah, Leah Chana bat Batya Reina, Yisrael, Abraham ben Vega, Yonatan, Reuven ben Rivka, Abraham Menashe ben Simcha, Yosef ben Esav, Shendel bat Vasha, Yosef ben Devorah, Abraham ben Vida, Bracha bat Miriam, Rivka bat Henya, Sarah bat Esther, Chava Fredel bat Mirnoga, Ayel bat Simon, Gabriela bat Ayala.
Rabbi bat Chayesar, Yemanuel ben Chayesar, Dina bat Yisrael.
Thanks. Rachel? Speak. Art. Penny.
Aivan vastuullinen, vastaanotto, tamjohtajana vastaanotto. Shalom from later have a yeah. Ron Freeman, Aaron Horowitz,
Debbie.
Laser Ben Hava, Nicholas Ben Zivia. Thank you.
Others online. Kola Kolim Bakila Tino, Kadosh Baruch Merak Mimalehem, Baxi Kam, Rabutam, Shlach, Lehem, Mehera, Fuat, Shem, Nishim. Report the Nefesh, report the Goof, the Talk Sharp, the Chazek, have skin trokehem. Shvakim Zoker for Proba Lavo Hashta, Agala, Uzman Hari, and Amar, Amen. Full and expedient and a beautiful recovery to those who need it most, and strength to those who are taking care of them. For the sickly Rachel, we invite you up for the sixth Aliyah. Amon, Rachel Chana, Bat Matityahu, Verena.
Amen. Ki Yisrael Shamayim Yadi V'amarti Chai Anochi Leolam Im Shanoti Barak Harbi V'toachez B'mishpat Yadi Ashiv Nakam L'tzarai V'lim Sanai Ashalem Ashkir Hitzai Midam V'charbi Tochal Basar Midam Halal V'shivya Merosh Parot Oyev Harni Goim Amo Kidam Avadav Yikom V'nakam Yashiv L'tzarav V'chiper Admato Amo.
Amen. Mitchell, can we invite you up for the seventh Aliyah? Something that sticks out to me in the sixth Aliyah is God says, "Lo, I raise my hand to heaven and say, as I live forever." And I wrote down in my notes here, who does God swear to? God lifts God's hand as if God has a hand, which Maimonides, Rambam tells God does not have body parts. But who is God swearing to? I swear to myself. I swear to all that is holy. But God here swears that despite the fact that we are not great people, that we can do a lot better, we are not the worst. We're not the worst that God has ever seen, and God is going to do what God can to be merciful to us and to save us and to lift us and to be kind to us. The poem here seems to end and continue with conversation. Verse 44. Wait, come on. Yamdu, Raphael ben Abraham ben Sarah, Shvi'i, Baruch Adonai Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher b'charbanu mikol ha'im, shenatamanu et torato, Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen.
Amen. V'yavo Moshe v'yidaber et kol divrei hashira hazot ba'oznei ha'am hu v'hoshea ben Nun. V'yachal Moshe l'daber et kol ha'devarim ha'ele el kol Yisrael. Vayomer aleichem shim'u levavchem l'chol hadvarim asher anochi me'ed bachem hayom asher tetzavum et b'nechem lishmor la'asot et kol divrei haTorah hazot ki Lo davar reku mikam kihu hayechem uvedavar hazeh ta'arichu yamim al hadamah asher atem ovrim et hayarden shama l'rishta. V'yidaber Adonai el Moshe ba'etzem hayom hazeh lemor aleh el har ha'avarim hazeh harnevo asher be'eretz Moab asher al pnei recho ure'eh et eretz Canaan asher ani noten livnei Yisrael la'achuzah umut bahar asher ata oleh shama ve'asef el amecha Kasher met Aaron achicha b'chor hahar ve'asef el amav asher ma'altem bi b'toch b'nei Yisrael b'mei merivat kadesh midbar tzin Al asher lo kidashtem oti b'toch b'nei Yisrael ki mineged tir'eh et haaretz v'shama lo tavo el haaretz asher ani noten livnei Yisrael.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam,
Asher Natan Lanu Torah Emet V'Chaye Olam Nata B'Cheinu Baruch Atah Adonai Notei HaTorah. Amen. Bree, any chance you can come up here and lead us in Patsy Kaddish? If you'd rather not, we'll do it. We're okay. But I thought, not today? Okay. In 2 weeks, you'll do Patsy Kaddish. Yikada, Yikada, Shemei Rabba, Yamadi Rakute, Yamlik Malkute, Ekaye, Honudyo, Beto, Ukaye, Depo, Beit Israel, Bagala, Bagala, Ubizman Kari, Veimeru, Amen, Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevora, Leolam Alme Omaya Yitbarach Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yita'ar V'yitramam V'yitase V'yithadar V'yitalev V'yithalal Shemei D'Kudusha B'rihu Le'elam Yikol Berchata V'shirata Tushvechata V'nechemata Da'amiran Me'alma V'yimeru. Amen. Candy, can we have you come up here and address the Torah? All right, so oh no, just kidding. Stop before that. I apologize. We've got a maftir reading that I totally forgot about. Because it's similar to what we just read. For the maftir aliyah, we call upon Rebecca to recite the maftir blessings, and for John to read the maftir for us. So Ha'amod, Rikabat Avraham, Maftira.
Baruch Adonai Hamborah.
Baruch
Baruch Adonai Hambarach Leolam Vaed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Baharmanu Mikol Ha'amin Benatan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Notei HaTorah.
Amen. V'yiraber Adonai el Moshe B'etzem hayom hazeh lemor aleh el ha'avarim hazeh har nevo asher be'eretz Moab asher al pnei Yericho Ure'eh et eretz Canaan asher ani noten Livnei Yisrael la'achuzah Umut bahar asher ata oleh shama Ve'yasef el amecha kasher met Aaron achicha b'hor hahar Ve'yasef el amav asher ma'altem Bi batoch b'nei Yisrael b'mei mirvat kadesh midbar tzin al asher lo kidashtem oti batoch b'nei Yisrael ki mineged tir'eh et haaretz v'shama lo tavo el haaretz Asher ani noten livnei Yisrael.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tocheinu. Baruch Atah Adonai Notei HaTorah.
Amen. If you're able, please rise. Ya'amod, Hamagbiat, Ha'amod, Hagolelet. I'll give you breath. Get 3 chances.
V'zot ha'Torah asher tzam Moshe livnei b'nei Yisrael al pi Adonai v'yad
Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. You may be seated. The Haftarah begins on page 1197. Just a note on this. I listened to a few podcasts. Those who don't know what a podcast is, it's a radio show that you can listen to anytime. And it's very strange as the world has turned around from, if you'd asked 15 years ago of people listening to radio shows, what are you, crazy? Radio shows? And now it's how I spend most of my time when I'm in the car by myself, listening to a radio show. And one of them, the host interviews a number of people, whether they're comedians or scientists or politicians or whatever. And one of the questions he often goes to is the spiritual podcast, is have you ever almost died? And a lot of the people will say no, or there was one time, and they'll tell about one stupid thing they did. They drove off a thing and they hurt themselves and they were in the hospital. That's the time they almost died. Whenever I listen to it, I think 1,000,000 times. Have I almost died? 1,000,000 times. I was driving home from after Yom Kippur services after Havdalah. I am exhausted. It has been a full day. The only thing I've had to drink really is Kiddush wine during Havdalah. I think I'm pretty okay to drive because it's a sip of man at Shabbat. But still, I haven't really eaten that day. I'm driving home on the 101 freeway. Next to me on the left is a big rig truck. Next to me on the right is an SUV. I am in my little tin can of an 11-year-old used Prius driving home. And the guy to the right of them, the person to the right of me, turns on their blinker, change lanes, starts changing lanes. And it was a quarter of a second, and they saw me, and they stayed in their lane. I thought, had they not seen me, there's no way I survived this one. And thank God nothing happened. Thank God there was no accident, there was no anything, no honking, nothing. Nothing like that. I was half a second away from being smushed. And how many times in my life have just those little tiny things happen? And so I recognize that had I lived 150 years ago or 3,000 years ago, I probably wouldn't have made it as long as I have now because of whatever disease I've had in my life and the modern medicine or the surgery that's helped that didn't exist 150 years ago. I'm grateful for that. But to think of all the times, just those tiny little moments that my life was saved. But it's because I opened my eyes or they opened their eyes or some heavenly hand came down and plucked us out to save us. How many times I've been passing, if you leave the elementary school after drop off, I'm walking with my kids. I have a double stroller on the way to school. I've got my daughter standing on the boogie board on the back and my two boys sitting in the front, and I push them and I walk them home afterwards with my daughter at school. You pass by every single car. Whoever dropped off these kids is on their phone as they're driving. Every single one of them. It's a miracle every day that I, thank God so far, have made it home unscathed. It's incredible. The Haftarah mirrors a little bit the Torah portion. The Torah portion is Moses' swan song. This one is David Melech's swan song. It's a poem that he recites in a similar way. And he says essentially the same thing. How lucky I am to be alive. How unusual it is to have made it this far. And he ends, and it sounds familiar, it's because we read it also on Pesach. And the last line is one that most everybody in this room knows, at least half the people in this room know, which depending on how you read it is either Migdol or Magdil. Migdol Yeshuot Malko V'Hoseh Chesed Minchiko L'David L'Zaro Ad Olam. What? Yeah, the end of Birkat Hamazon. And maybe today, if we're good, we'll do Birkat Hamazon. But to note, David, at the end of his life, he was a warrior, he was a soldier. He had his father-in-law / predecessor chasing after him, trying to kill him. He came out unscathed from all of those. Did he ever almost die? On the one hand, no, he was fine. On the other hand, yeah, a million times in his life, facing Goliath, facing Saul, facing anybody else. He faced tragedy and near destruction, but thank God he was okay. So we now turn to Rebecca to chant for us the blessings and this special haftarah for Ha'azim.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bahar bin tovim v'ratzavei divreihem hane'emarim be'emet Baruch atah Adonai Haboher Batorah Moshe Abdo Yisrael Amo Uvinbiye Hamet Vatzedek Vaydaber David LaAdonai et divrei hashira hazot Beyom Hitzil Adonai oto mikaf kol oivav umikaf Shaul Vayomar Adonai Sali sudati faltili Elohei tzuri echesed bo magini vekeret yishi misgabi unusi moshi nehamas toshieni mechulal ekra Adonai umeovai ivashea Kiafafuni mishperei mavet nahale veliyal yevaatuni chevle shaol sabuni kidmuni mokshe mavet vatsarli ekra Adonai Ve'el Elohai ekra vayishma'echecha lo koli ve'shavati ve'aznav vayitga'ash v'tir'ash ha'aretz mosdot hashamayim yirgazu vayitga'ashu ki haralo Allah ashan ve'apo ve'esh mipiv tohel kechalim ba'aru mimenu vayet shamayim vayerad va'arafel tahat raglav vayirkav al kerub vaya'od Vayera al kanfei ruach, vayashet choshev sevivotav sukot hashrat mayim ave shechakim minoga negdo ba'aru v'hale eish Yaremin shamayim Adonai ve'elyon yitain kolo vayishlach hitzim vayfitzein barak vayahom vayera'u afi keyam yigalu mosdot tevel Bega'arat Adonai menishpat ruach apo Yishlach mimarom, yikacheni, yamsheni, mimayim rabim, yatzileni, meoivi, az, misonai, kiamsu mimeni, yikadmuni beyom edi, Vahi Adonai Mishan li Vayotze la merhav oti Yachaltzeni ki chafetz bi Yignaleni Adonai ketzidkati Kevor yadai yashiv li Ki shamarti darchei Adonai velo rashati me Elohai Ki chol mishpatav lenegdi v'chukotav lo asur mimena va'eyet tamim lo va'esh tamra me'avoni va'yashev Adonai li ketzikati kevori leneged einam im chasid titchav sad im gebor tamim titamam im navar titavar ve'imikesh titapar ve'et am ani toshia ve'enecha al ramim tashpil ki atane ri Adonai va'Adonai yagi hash ki becha arutz gedud ve'Elohai adaleg shur ha'el tamim darko imrat Adonai tzerufa magehu leho hahosim bo Kimi el mi balade Adonai umitzur mi balade Eloheinu Ha'el ma'uzi chayil vayater tamim darki Meshaber raglai ka'ayalot ve'al bamotai ya'amidei Melamed yadai lamilchama venichat keshet nechusha zerotai vatiten li magen yishecha va'anotcha tarbei tarhitza adi tachteni velo ma'adu karsulai erdefa oi vai ve'ashmidein velo ashuv ad kalotam va'achalein ba'em chatzein velo yikumun vayiplu tahat raglai Vatazreini chayil lamilchama takri akamai takteni ve'oi vai tatali oref mesan ai ba'atzmitein Yishu ve'ein Moshia el Adonai velo anam ve'esh hakein ka'afar aretz ketit tutzot adikein erkaein Batfalteni merive ami tishmereni lerosh goyim amlo yadati ya'avduni b'nei nechar yitkahashuli lishmoa ozen yishamuli b'nei nechar yibolu veyakeru mimeskerotam Chai Adonai uvru suri veyarum Elohei sur yishi ha'el hanoten nekamot li umoridani tachteni umotzi meoevai umikamai teromeni meish hamasim tatzileni al-kei Oha Adonai bagoyim ulshimcha azamer migdol yeshuot malkol ve'ose chesed leni shihoy ledor uzaro odolam Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Tzor kol haolamim Tzadik bechol hadorot Ha'el haneman Ha'omer va'oseh Hamdaber umkayem Shekol devarav emet v'tzedek Ne'eman atahu Adonai Eloheinu Ve'ne'emanim devarecha, ve'davar echad midvarecha, ach lo yashuv rekam, ki el melech ne'eman v'rahaman atah, baruch atah Adonai, ha'el ha'ne'eman v'chol devarav. Rachem al Tzion ki hi beit hayenu, ve'la'alu vat nefesh to'oshia, B'mheira v'yameinu, Baruch atah Adonai, Mesameach Tzion b'vanecha. Samcheinu Adonai Eloheinu, Ve'eliyahu hanavi avdecha, U'malchut Beit David meshichecha, B'mheira yavo v'yagel libeinu, Al kisolo yeshev zar, Velo yinhalu oraherim kevodo, ki v'shem chadshecha nishbatalo, shelo yechve neiro le'olam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen David, Al HaTorah, V'al HaVodah, V'al HaNvi'im, V'al Yom HaShabbat Hazeh, Shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu, V'kedusha v'linuha, Lehavod u'tifaret, Al HaKol Adonai Eloheinu, Anachnu modim lach, Umbarchim otach, Yitbarach Shemha b'fikal hai, Tamid leolam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai, Hekadesh HaShabbat, Amen.
Rebecca, thank you, and to Tzvi and to John, thank you very much. Thanks for making sure that we're able to do it, we're able to see you and hear you. I'm looking over here because that's where I see it, but thank you very much. We put our Chumash away, we open up our Siddur. If you have the blue Siddur on page 336, if you're using the online PDF on page 181, we invite Rachel Carmona up to lead us in Ashrei. Again, page 336, our Siddur. Ashrei ha'am shekachalo, Ashrei ha'am Adonai Elohav. Bechol yom amartecha, v'lashincha le'olam ba'ed. Yor l'dor yishabach ma'asecha, u'v'rotecha yagidu. Be'ezuz v'rotecha yomeru, u'v'atcha asaprena. Anim rachum Adonai, erech hapayu v'lo chesed. Yodu Adonai kol ma'asecha, v'chasidecha yevachuka. Le'odia libnei adam v'gorotav, v'odar malchuto. Somech Adonai l'kol hanochi, zokeh l'kol ha'chufi. Poteach et yadecha, v'tzil l'kol haratzon. Karol Adonai l'kol korav, l'kol asher yikrahu b'ne'emet. Shomer Adonai et kol ohavav, v'et kol resha'im yashlim. V'anachnu b'va'ya, me'olam le'olam. Rachel, thank you so much. Eric and David, can we invite you up here to open up the ark for us? Let's see how that goes. And Miles, are you able to carry the Torah for us? Thank you. Those who are able, please rise. Online, in our Siddur, in our regular Siddur, we're on page 340. In the online Siddur, we're on page 183.
Hallelujah, Shem Adonai, Kini v'gav shemo levado, Odo ha'eretz v'shamayim, hayarem kerem le'amo, Deila v'chok hashina, Livnei Yisrael, Am Kerovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Midbar le'David, Avol Adonai b'nei, Avol Adonai Yahod, Avol Adonai Gevod Shemo, Yishak Avol Adonai be'adat kodesh, Kol Adonai al hamayim Elokem hirim, Adonai rabim, Kol Adonai ba'koach, Kol Adonai be'hadar, Kol Adonai zomer arazim, Vaydaber Adonai edan be'alanon, Vayikdem kemo egel lebanon v'ziyon, kemo b'negim, Kol Adonai v'telavodei, Kol Adonai yamin mi'barei, Kol Adonai mitlagadek, Kol Adonai kol al-ayalon, Vayekdom ye'arot u'vechalo kolo, u'vekavon, Adonai yachor ya'asha, Vayeshe Adonai melech le'olam, Adonai od ve'amor yitchen, Adonai yevarech et amo v'asher.
Musaf service begins on page 354. Page 354. If you're joining us online, it's 184 in that PDF.
Yitkada v'yitkada shemecha.
Amen.
Yama devra pirotei v'yamlik malchutei. V'chayekva v'yom mekon v'chayei b'chol beit Yisrael. V'yala u'bizman kari v'yimeru. Amen. Yehi shmeira v'negora le'olam le'amaya yitparak v'yishtabach v'yipar v'yitrama v'yitnatzeh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalav shemei kodesham v'yichu le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata Kush v'chata nechemata Amiran be'alma V'yimeru. Amen.
The Amidah begins on page 357 or online 185.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avoteinu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor VeHanora Elyon Romeo Chasadim Korim Vekonei Hakon Vezocher Kazei Avot Umehigo Elimnei Levan Shemo Yahavah Melech Ozer Moshiach U'Magin Baruch Adonai Magin Avraham Ve'ezra Tzara Ata Gibor Le'Adonai V'chayei Meitim Ata Rab Ve'Hoshia V'chaker Chaim V'Chesed V'chayei Meitim V'Racham Yisrael Zomer Kochlim V'Rofei Kolim U'Latir Asurim U'V'chayei Emunato L'Shenei Yafa Michamo Tavam Yevorro U'Mido Melach Melech Mehid U'Mechayeh U'Matzmiach Yeshua V'Nevanat L'Achayot Meitim Baruch Atah Adonai V'chayei Hameitim. Na'aritzcha v'na'akdishcha k'zot siach shalvei kodesh Amaqdishi v'shimcha b'kodesh Katuv al yad Eliecha v'karazeh al zeh Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzavot, v'lo kol haaretz kevodo. Kevodo v'le'olam, v'shalom Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hu Eloheinu, Hu Avinu, Hu Malkeinu, Hu Moshiach, Vehu Yashmienu, Rachamal Shemini Pnei Nekotai, Yotachem Elohim, Ani Adonai Elohechem, Udirei Kol Shekakatuhu Lemor, Yevok Adonai Leolam, Eloi Tzion, Ledo. Hallelujah. The Lord, the Lord, the
Page 372, or on line 203, Hadish Shalom.
יקרא וקרא מרבה,
אמן.
רמה דברה כותב ימיך כותב וחייקון ויום יכון חיי בכל בית ישראל בעגלה ודבק יריב ואמרו אמן. יש מרבה מבורך לעולם עולם ועד בריא יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתהלל ויתהלל שמי קודשה בריחו תהילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה להמירם ואמר אמרו אמן. תתקבל צלות תאון ותאון לכל ישראל קודם ובון ושמיה אמרו אמן. יהי שלום רב עמים שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. רוצה שלום במרומה והוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
Page 400, or on line page 204, Ein Elohim.
Thank you, Eloheinu, thank you, Eloheinu, thank you, Eloheinu, thank you, Moshiach, thank you, Eloheinu, thank you, Eloheinu, thank you, Eloheinu, thank you, Moshiach, me, Eloheinu, me, Eloheinu, me, Eloheinu.
We invite Brother Shankerman back onto the bima to open up the ark for us, as we're able to please rise for the word of Aleinu page 402 or 205. You're going to be seated. One added psalm for this time of year. If you're in the blue Siddur, we go back to page 170. Page 170, page 170. In the red Siddur somewhere close. If you're in another book, if you're online, you can find Psalm 27. Psalm 27. O Lord, I truly seek you. Do not hide yourself from me in anger. Turn not in anger from your servant. You have always been my help. Do not forsake me, O God, my deliverer. Teach me your way, O Lord. Lead me on a straight path. Deliver me not to the will of my enemies. Trust in the Lord and be strong. Take courage and hope in the Lord. This week, our community notes the yard sites of Isaac Flatchner, Yaakov Moskovich, Isaac Edelman, Sue Feigenbaum, Sarah Lederich, Hilda Stein, Henrika de Haaf, Ruth Nathanson, Max Poland, Cynthia Sneed Scott, Ray Fink, Alex M. Kaplan, Louis Miller, Hilda R. Rabinowitz, Ben Rutberg, Harry Waters, Gussie Haberman, Jeffrey Craig Joseph, Ida Kotler, George Levitt, Fania Orlowski, Marge Rapp Sherman, Craig Stewart Rubenstein, Patricia Sobel, Irving Gill, Molly Jokowitz, Harry Croyne, Lottie Shulman, Rosalind Tanner, Seema Zahavi, Elvira Gartler, Rose Katz, Ruth Lazarus, Arlene Levinson, and Harriet Weiss Overman. Gonna remember the beautiful ones. Judy, do you want to come up here and share a memory? Carefully. Up here and share a memory. Were there others here or online? And I see a lot of familiar names. Let me see if there's others who also want to share a memory after Judy. That some will be sharing during the week.
Thank you for saying the name.
A little bit stronger.
Okay. My mother, Sarah Ledrich, was a Holocaust survivor. She really never told us her story, but Holocaust survivors, a lot of them had a childhood, and it was before the Holocaust. So there are things for my mother that she was here, and she was here. She was a combination of things. She kept a Jewish home. Okay, if I turned on the light by mistake on, before God would punish me, so people threatened God. But she also liked roller derby, and she liked wrestling. I mean, not just like, cheered. Okay, she was an excellent baker and an excellent cook. It was really hard getting recipes because she didn't do that. I'm wearing some of the things of my mother's. This is what she wore as shawl every week on top. This shawl is her high holiday shawl. And you probably, I didn't realize why she wore it and why she wore, there's a less fancy one until I was doing a meeting, doing a Leah in the chapel. And I go, oh, she always had something ready to kiss the Torah. Rabbi Rubenstein said that she never wanted girls to have an Aliyah. Once she got one, she wanted to be ready, especially because my uncle was a Torah reader at a Dot Ariel, and her other brother was Gabbai. So she liked to be up with them all the time. And Larry has a cute story why we're showing, why we're having herring today for lunch.
Oh.
Yeah, pretty nice.
He says, okay to cheat once in a while.
And so she would have the herring and tell you.
Say, don't tell Judy.
So it was a secret for her high blood pressure. She wasn't supposed to have it, but she did.
I can know it, but Judy shouldn't know.
Yeah, and I saw pictures of my mother in Uzbekistan during the Holocaust, and she was the one of the siblings who just didn't want to restrict. I mean, she said she wanted to lose weight, and she should, but she just couldn't. It was just, she was so thin. It was horrible. So I'm glad that she enjoyed her food, especially the herring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, and thank you
Thank
for the
you.
herring
Thank
today.
you.
Were there others who have yard sites who wanted to share? Maybe during the week we'll hear from some more people. Those in a period of mourning or observing a yard site are welcome to rise and join with us in the words of Kaddish Yakom, or on page 410, or online page 207. Words of Kaddish. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabbah, Be'alma, Dibarak, Urute, Be'amlich, Malchute, Be'hayechon, U'yomechon, U'bechaye, Dechol, Beit Israel. Ba'agala, U'izman, Kari, B'imru, Amen. Yehei, Shmei, Rabbah, Mevorach, Be'olam, U'omei, Omaya. Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitpa'ar, V'yitromam, V'yitnaseh. V'yit Hagar, V'yit Haleh, V'yit Halal, Shemei, V'kudashah, B'ritu. La'ela, Mikol, V'rachata, V'shirata. Tush V'chata, V'nechamata. Ta'amiram, V'alma, V'imru, Amen. Yehei, Shlama, Rabba, Min Shemaya. V'chayim Aleinu, V'alkol Yisrael, V'imru, Amen. Osei Shalom, V'imamav. Hu Ya'aseh Shalom. Aleinu, V'alkol Yisrael, V'imru, Amen. You may be seated. Thank you all for joining us today. How wonderful to have guests from out of town and people who haven't seen in a while. And people online. Thank you again to Rebecca, to Tzvi, to John for reading and chanting for us today, and for everybody else participating. Tonight, Havdalah, we're sticking to 8:30 right now in the online Zoom. So you're going to join us online for Havdalah at 8:30 tonight. Still 5 minutes for us to do Havdalah together. Tomorrow morning at 8:30 in the morning, also, we'll be having Minion up here on this Bema and out there on the Zoom, so that we can start the week off with some davening. There is Hebrew school tomorrow, so just know that that transition is still happening. And then Monday night starts Sukkot. So, right, so, tomorrow I think that men's club and Hebrew school are decorating the sukkah for us. Thank you to them. At 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
If you'd like to join us, if you've got Scott, come join us, help build it, help put it together. Otherwise, tomorrow, Monday night starts Sukkot, so Tuesday and Wednesday morning of 2 weeks in a row. We've got Yom Tov services in here. We have extra lulav and etro if you wanted to borrow, if you wanted to use ours when we're here, or if you want to purchase them, arrange that as well. There's a Sukkot dinner next Friday night. Jared Stein is leading our service with us with our bar mitzvah, and we'll be doing services outside. There's a Shabbat dinner. You can RSVP for that. And Simchat Torah, there's another dinner that night. Since celebrating all of that outside, so we can have a lot of people here for that. I'm sure there's a lot of other things going on, but you have the handouts, so you know what they are. But thank you all.
Sukkah dinner right on Tuesday.
Men's club has a sukkah and Star Trek and scotch and steak.
Yeah. After the
Something
service.
in the sukkah.
Yeah.
A lot of things going on. All right. Is that along?
Yeah.
All right. Page 412, Adon Olam. Or for online, page 211.
Adon Olam, Hashem Allah, Tedeko, Yitzir Nivra, Nasa, Rem Shakro, Azayim Lekshemo Digra, Adon Olam, Yachkaveh, Kivrot Nakot, Levano Yilok Nora, Adon Olam, Vehu Haya, Vehu Hore, Vehu Yevetikva, Adon Olam, Adon Olam, Hashem Allah, V'derko, Yedinivra, Leit Nasa, V'Evsuko, Azay Melech Shemo Nikra, Adon Olam, Vehu Echad, Ve'ein Sheni, Le'am Shilo Le'achira, Adon Olam, Ve'li Reishit, Ve'li Tachlit, Ve'lo Va'od Ve'achitra, Adon Olam, Ve'hu Eli, Ve'chai Go'ali, Ve'zor Ve'li Ve'etzara, Adon Olam, Ve'hu Nitzi, Omanotzi, Menach Kozi Ve'omega, Adon Olam, Ve'yado, V'akim Druchi, Ve'ikishon Ve'ayra, Adon Olam, Ve'im Ruchi, Geviyati, Adon Veli Ve'lo Ira, Adon Olam, Adon Olam, Hashem Allah, V'terko, V'tinivra, V'eit Nasa, V'echemtzoko, Zay Melech Shemo Nikra, Adon Olam.
Thanks to Dr. Benny for leading us. Thank you to Art for welcoming us. As we're able, please rise for Kiddush and Motzi. Shamri B'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat, Asot et HaShabbat, Adorot V'Rikolam, V'Edim B'nei Yisrael, Od Yilei Olam,
Yisheket Yamim Asa Adonai, et HaShamayim ve'et ha'aretz, u'bayom ha'shvi'i, Shabbat vayinachash.
Al Ken Barak Adonai, B'mazot V'yikadshei Sabri, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam, Borei B'ri Ha'gafen. Dave, you want to help us with Motzi? Dave, you know Motzi? What's under here? What's that? Oh, yeah, what's under here? Come on! Baruch Atah
Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam,
Motzi
lechem min haaretz. All right.
Shabbat Shalom.